Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's so good to have you here. In this video, we are going to talk about how to get into ServiceNow from a project management background. Now, there's two really good paths available to you. The first path, and the path of least resistance, and the one you can exploit now, is to continue being an excellent PM. Just do it for ServiceNow projects. Some of the biggest and most successful ServiceNow projects that I have been on have been led by project managers who knew nothing about ServiceNow. If you want to listen to one of those experiences, I'm going to have a link in the description below to an episode of CJ and the Duke where we interviewed one of these PMs. So why is it that a PM can be so successful in a ServiceNow deployment without knowing ServiceNow? Well, it's easy because the PM obsesses about the outcomes constrained by cost, schedule, scope, and resources. Those are the levers and the variables that the project manager tries to manage, all while also handling risks, issues, decisions, actions, and changes. They are managing the efforts of dozens to hundreds of people, all on a single overarching objective, which nobody, except for the PM, is responsible for in its entirety. It is a critical skill set. It is a powerful, valuable niche. And if you're excellent at this already, why on earth would you want to dilute that excellence in order to establish a merely adequate skill set in ServiceNow? Now, some would argue that a PM with good knowledge of ServiceNow would be making better estimates on ServiceNow projects, and therefore the project would run better. But really, isn't it more likely that the project manager is going to be spending most of their time managing the project and therefore don't have time to be the big ServiceNow expert? They will ask the excellent ServiceNow expert their thoughts on the scope and size of the project and carry those estimates on into the project plan. Okay, so what if you are applying to be a ServiceNow PM and the organization asks you for a minimum number of years experience in ServiceNow? What I would do is challenge that question immediately. I would say something like, in those 3 years of experience on ServiceNow, what skill do you believe would make me better at managing the cost, scope, schedule, and resources of a ServiceNow deployment? The second path you might consider is one of doing consulting on ServiceNow's SPM suite. SPM stands for Strategic Portfolio Management. This is where you would come into other PMOs and you would help them transition or build onto the ServiceNow SPM module. This module contains ideation, demand management, project management, both in the agile and the waterfall sense. It also does cost planning, resource management, planning the portfolios, managing the programs. It's got road mapping. It's got application portfolio management. It's the suite of tools that we use to decide as an organization, how do we best spend our money? And then how do we make sure those initiatives are successful when we decide to deploy them? And then how do we mitigate the real life stuff that comes in and gets in our way? The reason why your previous PM experience is going to be critical to this is that the industry is dying for people who understand the language of the PMO. For too many years, PMOs have relied on partners that have ITSM specialized resources, but they don't speak the language of the PMO. They don't know what keeps the PMO up at night worried. They don't know the big, huge, juicy, exciting outcomes that the PMO wants to achieve. So for my money, former PMs would be excellent resources for deploying the SPM module on ServiceNow. There's two roadblocks in your way. Number one, you have to understand the fundamentals of the ServiceNow platform in a build capacity. You have to understand all about business rules, all about Flow Designer, all about UI policies and client scripts and UI actions. All those build components, you have to know them. So you have to have the same level of expertise as a ServiceNow admin would. The second skill you need is to understand how it all works as any one of the various stakeholders. And this is a much harder task than in other parts of ServiceNow because there are so many different roles and so many different processes contained in ServiceNow. It's a completely different experience to be a demand manager than it is to be a project manager, than it is to be a portfolio manager, than it is to be a stakeholder that's just involved in these projects and demands. And it takes a decent amount of tool finesse to understand how the system is actually working when you're managing the data through the process. And if you don't believe me, consider this. when actually actualizing your actual actuals, which actuals are actually the most actual actuals actually. Yeah, that's actually a thing. So to get Path 2, first of all, get your CSA, get that fundamental platform knowledge from a build perspective. And the second thing you do is get your PDI and start inputting your demo data, start working through the processes as if you were each of these stakeholders. And if you need any help with that, my door is always open. My name is Robert the Duke Fedoric. I am a ServiceNow architect, consigliere, career coach, and recruiter. If I can help you find better ServiceNow outcomes, reach me via rob@theduke.digital. Thanks for watching.